housing's a huge issue in Vancouver, and it's now even always in the papers. It's never been in the papers to the degree that it's been in the last, several years. What are the challenges we face?
Well, the reason why we're here is because you're right. It becomes this huge issue whenever we have a municipal campaign. It's the #1 issue. Clearly, everybody thinks housing affordability is a municipal issue, but for some reason, when we get to federal election time, it's not on anybody's radar. But it's the federal government that built 625,000 units of social housing across this country. It's the federal government that runs CMHC and has the ability to transfer money to the provinces to build more affordable housing. It's the federal government that has the opportunity to stimulate rental housing development like nobody else can. And for some reason, this has been the first election in my lifetime where it seems that housing is becoming an issue during the federal election. The Prime Minister is here making announcements on housing affordability, and so I think housing affordability is sort of rising up as sort of a federal election issue. And in a tight campaign where everybody's running about 30% right now in the polls, they're polling into those swing ridings and trying to figure out what's going to move votes. And I think it's going to be housing affordability, because that's the one issue that people are spending the most amount of their income on.
Okay, well, let's just back up there. You talked about what the federal government's done in the past. You didn't mention it, but we're really talking about what they did 20, 30, 40 years ago. Most of those units, they haven't built new units for many years, and we were talking about how the federal government has essentially abandoned it. They've held the issue, but they're not kind of doing anything. Talk about that a little bit.
They built these buildings pre-95, and so they're paying mortgage payments on those. They may have a 30-year, 40-year mortgage on those. Once those mortgages are expiring, the federal government actually has this great opportunity to do, if they do nothing, if they just keep the amount of money they're spending on social housing the same, if they just do nothing, they're going to see billions of dollars come in that they could use to develop more affordable housing.
New projects.
Yeah, through new projects, just because those mortgages will be getting paid off. However, the plan on the books now is, as those mortgages run out, just to recognize the money as surplus, just to keep it. And if they do that, then we're going to see more homelessness.
When we talk about housing like this, or government-supported housing, I think for a lot of people, they think downtown East Side, or single occupancy rooms, that kind of thing. When in fact, what you're really talking about is trying to expand rental housing for the kind of low to middle income working people. They have jobs, but they just, in Vancouver and other large urban centers that are costly.
They could be people who are working, making less than $40,000 a year. That rental housing isn't being built right now, because if you're making $40,000 a year, your affordable rent is about $1,000 a month. We're not building anything for that market right now, right? And the group of people who are in there is growing, and the supply of housing available to them is actually shrinking, because we're tearing it down and building new condos and everything else. So that's a huge problem. We're recruiting students from all over the world. BC is a home and a hub for international students, but students are coming to this city, and there's nowhere for them to live. Where they're going to live, right? In the north, we have resource workers coming up, and when they go into a town, they may be making the big bucks and can afford to rent a place. But then what's happening to the person who's already in that unit when the rent is doubling and tripling? They're ending up homeless.
Federally, what are the solutions here? I presume a lot of this is tax incentives.
Yeah, absolutely.
What sorts of things that the federal politicians could be looking at doing that would help?
So I think they can look to the private sector and provide tax incentives like they used to. I think that there's some work they can do around capital gains exemptions for landlords, or allow them to defer. I think for co-op housing, they have to find a way to make sure that the 1/3 of families who have their rent geared to their income in co-op housing developments continue to receive some sort of subsidy, so that those families don't end up on waiting lists for social housing. And I think the federal government has to get back into the business of building social housing, nonprofit housing.